All right, everybody, what is up? We are making our way through this tournament, Duels of Runeterra 10. Now we are at some round 8 gameplay between Fresh Lobster and the Black Boss. So if you are returning, welcome the heck back. If you are new, my name is Justin, also known as Shit Just Works. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you are new. If you do enjoy the casting footage of this round 8 gameplay, definitely don't forget to hit that like button on the video. This round in particular, as I mentioned, was Fresh Lobster and Black Boss, both 7-0 at the time. And I gotta say, Black Boss, I mean, he was a beast. He was 7-0, and he was playing Hecarim Vlad. And if anybody's been keeping up with the meta, that is a deck that we were not expecting to see. So you guys are in for a treat with this one. So it's about time I shut up and we get into the round 8 gameplay. We have Ash Sejuani, always a good choice. Actually, have seen less Ash Sejuani than I would have liked to have seen this tournament so far. I just think because it's so overrun with sea monsters, it's just kind of gotten overshadowed. And then we have, you'll never guess the second one or the third one, sea monsters and Heimervi. So this is a very typical lineup where there's like some sort of Ionia P and Z deck, then sea monsters, and then whatever's left over gets shoved into the last deck.
Well, then you looked at the wrong deck list, because on the side of the Black Boss, we have the MF Sejuani Pilfer deck, we have Shen Fiora, and we have Vladimir Hecarim.
Oh, no way. Are you kidding me? Vladimir Hecarim?
Harrowing Vladimir Hecarim.
Oh my god. All right, Fresh Lobster, if you're listening, please, for the love of God, please, I need this. I need this today. We need this. Do not ban this. Jesus, I can't even think of the name now. Vladimir. Do not ban the Vlad. Not only Vladimir, but Vladimir Hecarim. Like, come on. Let's be real. That is awesome.
This is, looking at the deck, this is something.
And he's 7-0. Like, I think he just surprised everybody so much with this deck. Ooh, all right. Here's something that I was discussing with Cash yesterday. This Misfortune Sejuani list he's running, though, right?
Yeah.
So it's definitely, it wants to be like aggressive.
Yeah.
What? Like Black Market Merchant and Pilfered Goods. Why?
So this is the King of Runeterra tournament. This was absolutely one of the favorite lists of the Korean players. They brought 5 decks, and they didn't have to win with the same deck twice, but every single player, if they had the opportunity, was playing this Misfortune Sejuani deck. Okay. Their adaptations included Wolf Rider, just to accelerate you into the Riptide Rex turn, because you are playing the triple Riptide Rex. But it's just like this Pilfer sort of value mid-range deck. Like, it's definitely one of those decks that looks really weird on paper, and it took me more than a couple of games of watching it to really kind of start to understand the playlines that can go along with. And generally, just you have so many avenues to actually just take over a game. Sometimes the Pilfer package just takes over a game. Sometimes Misfortune just takes over a game. Sejuani has these capabilities. Riptide Rex can destroy your opponent's board. The one concern that I do have, at least in the North American European meta, is that Riptide Rex is very, very weak into sea monsters.
And it looks like we are actually about to get into game 1, so let's get this puppy started. I guess our argument in talking about it was, you know, this deck wants to be aggressive.
Yeah.
So, like, why have the value cards like that? But I do think you're right. It is also trying to go. It's got 3 Riptide. So it wants to get to Riptide, which is a turn 8 play. So it's not so aggressive where it's trying to win before that, which is a lot like Lucian Zed is trying to win before that, etc. So maybe, yeah. I mean, maybe the Koreans just know where it's at right now, and that's why they're playing this lineup, even with the Black Market and the Pilfered Goods.
Yeah, I almost feel it's more like a plunder value deck, and it looks aggressive because you do want to consistently trigger plunder, but you are a value deck at the end of the day, which is why we see things like the 3 Hired Gun.
Yeah. Yeah, Hired Gun's something that I really wasn't expecting to be all too popular, but it seems to have caught on big time.
I played it, so in like the day 1 when everyone was still trying to figure out the meta, I was playing Bannerman, and I was playing cards like Hired Gun and Jaw Hunters, and they just felt really impactful, and I just kind of like put them to the wayside. So it's nice to see them like come back out in a big way now, and I actually think we're going to see Jaw Monsters kind of expand into more decks than just the Sea Monsters in the future.
All right, so right from the get, I'm seeing Demacia Ionia. Fresh Lobster, I'm telling you, I'm going to be severely disappointed if you banned out this Vladimir Hecarim deck.
I think it's pretty unlikely that he banned out the Misfortune Sejuani.
Dude, don't stop putting that negativity out there, man. Oh, Jesus.
Imagine being 7-0 in one of these tournaments, looking at your opponent's deck and being like, yeah, I'm going to ban the Vlad Hecarim.
Like, what is going
Shadow
on?
Isle Noxus, that's what spooks me. That actually does mean, though, that the Black Boss will be the first player in Top Cut that I think I've seen throughout the entirety of Rising Tides not running Piltover and Zaun anywhere in the lineup.
Yes, Piltover and Zaun is obviously very strong. Ezreal is insane. Most people are running Ezreal somewhere in their lineup. So, yeah, and it's funny. He's going with this Fiora Shen deck. So, Shen got buffed. I'm not entirely convinced that the Shen buff made him that much more playable, but he is definitely better. And I am kind of pulling now for this Shen victory. So, Fresh Lobster, man, I love your stash. I love your glasses. I love you. But, man, the Fiora Shen deck, man, I'm rooting for Shen and Fiora right now. I got to tell you.
Yeah, and it's looking like more or less just a standard Bannerman deck with 1 Deny and 3 Shen. So we're not going to see like a Greenglade Caretaker sort of taking over the game with a Bright Steel formation or anything crazy like that. But I do think that means that Fresh Lobster is very heavily favored in this matchup. I think that's why the Ash Sejuani has been such a mainstay, is it's great against these stat-based mid-range decks like the Bannerman. So I do not think Black Boss is going to be able to pull this one out, at least in game number 1.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be difficult, that's for sure. All right, guys, wait, hold up. As always, all the information you guys are going to need is going to be in the description below. Fresh Lobster's Twitch, Boulevard's information. Again, awesome time casting alongside him. We're also going to have the Duels of Runeterra Discord server below, just in case you guys need it. But most importantly, again, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We're going to have all the rest of the rounds of this tournament coming up the remainder of this week. I just want to apologize real quick. I know Fresh Lobster streams a little bit laggy. I know typically he has some internet connectivity issues, but thank God we're playing card games though, right? At least it's not shooters. Be a rough life for playing shooters. So yeah, and even to start right here, I mean, you got 2 Omen Hawks versus these 2 Fleet Feathers, and it just feels really bad. Like, these Omen Hawks trade so well into not only the Fleet Feathers, but you can see the Grizzled Ranger now. Just feels really good to block any one of those with an Omen Hawk.
Yeah, these Omen Hawks not being able to get any value here in the early game, especially because they did buff up this Trapper, and now there's a Yeti somewhere in the top 5, or the top 3 rather, for Lobster, and that's just another card that's difficult for these Bannerman decks to deal with, especially since the stat nerfs of the Badger Bear and the Grizzled Ranger. And I even think that as long as Lobster can get down both Trifarian Glory Seekers after Black Boss attacks next turn, especially if he top decks the Yeti, he's got a big Trifarian Assessor turn coming his way.
How much of a difference do you think Shen makes in this deck, right? I mean, and how much of a difference do you think he makes overall in the matchup, though?
In this, I don't think he's going to make a lot of difference in this matchup, especially since we do see 2 Culling Strike in Lobster's hand. Those do still kill Shen, which is going to be a big issue for him, but I don't think the barrier matters too much, especially since Reckoning is one of the bigger ways for Lobster to actually remove these boards, and Shen doesn't help with that at all.
Yeah, that is a huge deal to note, so I'm glad you pointed that out. I mean, Shen very much feels like Thresh in that regard, where he's still a Culling Strike target, and in a meta right now where we just see a ton of Culling Strikes being played, that honestly is just a pretty crap play in general. Every time you play Shen, he's going to be probably the first thing targeted with a Culling Strike.
Yeah, and we're going to see the Yeti come out, and I do think we're going to see the double Trifarian Glory Seeker after combat from Lobster to set up for this Assessor play. Just looking at this spell lineup from Black Boss, there is one Purify, which actually could be a blowout in this matchup, because we do see Fury of the Norths from Lobster, as well as the ability to remove Frostbite on one of his own units. If he can get down a Brightsteel formation, then I actually think he's got an okay chance at least taking over the game offensively, but I think his life total is going to suffer in the meantime, especially if Lobster does get off this draw 3.
Yeah, Trifarian Assessor just does so much work every time in this matchup. And actually, the Trifarian is buffed, right? With the Omen Hawk?
So I think it got buffed by at least one Omen Hawk, and we're actually seeing Black Boss very smartly pass here, understand that Lobster wants to set up for a good Assessor turn, and Black Boss actually has it feels like an unusually good read on Lobster's hand at the moment.
We actually, just for all of you viewers out there, I am going to actually add the score up top. Fresh Lobster has inspired me. because we put DORNA 70, so I'm going to put 0-0 currently for the score.
I'm curious to see if he's actually. It didn't look like the assessor was actually buffed. I think it is just a 4-3, which means he could fire it down here for 2 draws still.
Hey, so we actually just got raided by Gems. What is up, my dude? Gems, how did it go today, man? I know the EU tournament sounded spicy from what Boulevard was telling me, so hopefully it all went well, and I imagine that means it's over. Can somebody throw in the chat who won the tournament?
Yeah, I would love to know. I was following the journey of EU pretty much all day, so I'm extremely excited to know how that one actually ended, who took first place, and all that good stuff.
So thank you for the raid, my dude. Appreciate it a ton. So we have Fresh Lobster and BlackBoss here, which we were just talking earlier. So for anybody joining, if you're not familiar with BlackBoss's lineup, you should be. because he's 7-0 currently with, I'm going to say this twice because I know it's a little bit unbelievable when you hear it. Noxus Shadow Isles deck, which is Vladimir and Hecarim. Yes, I said that right. Vladimir and Hecarim.
And much to Shit's demise, I do believe there's a very good chance that was the deck that was banned out here.
Yeah, I'm really kind of a little salty towards Fresh Lobster. I'm not cool with that right now. I love his stash, but if he banned that deck out, I'm not feeling it right now. And it looks like, so Haunt said LOL Gems just went to sleep, but Ranu won, or Ranu, don't know how to pronounce that one either, won versus Pearson, so sweet.
Oh, okay, so Pearson did make it to the finals. Well, congratulations to those players. We're going to see if
Congrats,
Lobster can find his way into the top cut of this North America tournament after, I believe he had a very rough start to the European one. But new tournament, new day. I think same lineup, but finding a little bit more success here in North America.
And you were talking earlier, just to kind of delve back into this game here, about why you think Fresh Lobster kind of has the advantage in this matchup. And I think the 2 harsh winds in hand kind of further exacerbate why that advantage is there. That's just going to completely wreck this attack from the BlackBoss right now. And I really don't know if he's going to be able to come back from a double harsh winds over the next couple of turns.
Yeah, especially since we do see the Assessor lining up beautifully onto that Cythria the Bold, and even Brittle Steel could take out this Grizzled Ranger for the turn. Yeah, there's really just not a lot of tools that the Demacia decks have available to them, and the worst part is that we do see 1 Deny in BlackBoss's deck. I cannot understate how unlikely that card is to get value here. There are, I think, 2 cards in the whole deck of Lobster that you can actually deny, and it's Calling Strike and Reckoning. But Lobster definitely doesn't need a Reckoning to kind of take over this matchup. And we see his hand doesn't even have this available to him. And trading Deny for something like a Calling Strike, it's not mana efficient, it's not tempo efficient, it's not coming down onto an ideal target unless it was Frostbitten. But Lobster hasn't found an Ash yet and doesn't have a lot of challengers out, which is usually where they're going to get the most value. And we've seen 2 big Assessor draws from him so far, so I'm actually pretty surprised to not see him come up with either of these, any Ashes or Challengers just yet. Does have that Glory Seeker in hand still, but gonna have to see how Boss takes out this board.
Yeah, he's really taking his time to think here too, so I'm curious as to what his next steps are going to be. I guess you kind of think about just plopping down the Avarosian Sentry here, and it does look like he's considering it. It is buffed as well. It is a 3-2. So it does also trade with the Bannerman, as well as obviously the Tracker and the Ranger. But I don't really think he has a choice in that situation. There's not much more he can play there. Everything else is, he wants to play the Ice Veil or the Glory Seeker on an attack turn. So I do think that's the right play. And he's still going to get incredible value here off of this Harsh Winds once this attack goes down.
Yeah, it looks like Boss is actually trying to line up the attacks so that even if Harsh Winds does come out, it's not going to be super devastating to him, as we do see this Swiftwing Lancer lining up onto this 4/4 Avaros and Trapper, so the Cythria buff will let that live. We see the Fleet Feather Tracker lining up onto the Omen Hawk. So yeah, I think he is just very cognizant of the Harsh Winds. And so far, it feels like Boss has had a perfect read on Lobster's hand throughout the entirety of this game.
Yeah, and I do think, I mean, listen, he literally has to be playing around Harsh Winds all game, right? I mean, it's a 3 of in Fresh Lobster's deck, I think. So, like, that you always, every single attack, if Fresh Lobster's sitting on 6 mana, he needs to be aware of that. And it's Unfortunate if he doesn't have a buff or anything for Cythria here. He's probably going to lose his Cythria. I'm actually checking right now to see. He does have a repost that he could use in the Cythria, but it doesn't look like it.
Yeah, it was a little surprising to me, actually, that Lobster just went ahead and locked in these blocks. His refill is not impactful. He's got a lot more spells in hand than you would really like. So Boss actually has the board advantage in a major way here because Lobster chose not to fire off that Harsh Winds, kind of waiting for the repost like you said. But Boss understanding that losing the Cythria wasn't nearly as bad for him as it was for Lobster. And once again, it feels like if Boss knew that there were this many spells in Lobster's hand, that play makes a lot of sense. So once again, he's just got the perfect read.
I can't with this draw. Like, I literally, while you were talking, I'm like, man, he's just one Trifarian Assessor away from just like getting back into this game. And I feel like everybody playing Ash Noxus always tops Trifarian Assessors when they need them, and always when they're going to draw at least like 2 or more from the Assessor. So definitely feels good to top that card right now. And he does have a little bit more options, but like you said, still no Ash. So still in a pretty tough spot. And he also can't play the Hearthguard. So it really feels bad that he's not curving into that right now.
Yeah, and he doesn't get Iceveil Archer and Rhymefang Wolf down this turn either, so he's going to have to rely on Brittle Steel if he does want to sort of force out the value with that, but it is possible that Boss still has Riposte, and that could be a big punish.
So it looks like this Frostbite to me tells me he's probably going to go in for the attack and try to get in some damage if possible. He just wants to take the bigger blocker off the field so that maybe his Yeti lives.
Yeah, I think you were challenging that out with the Glory Seeker anyway.
Yeah.
So I do think you're still safe to attack with, at the very least, your Yeti, and I don't really mind sending in the Trifarian Assessor either. It will downtrade onto something, but I think that maybe you don't, because the Bright Steel Protector does come out as a blocking option. You'd really like to get rid of either that Badger Bear or that Fleet Feather Tracker, but you do have the Brittle Steel available for that as well.
Yeah, that Bright Steel is going to prevent that Fleet Feather from dying, so it definitely feels a little bit bad after the Frostbite comes down. So I'm not sure. I mean, do you take the attack here? I mean, you trade. Everything trades pretty evenly. I mean, the Yeti will trade hopefully well with something, but I imagine BlackBoss is going to have something like a repost. I mean, he's sitting on 9 mana, so there's got to be something. And he decides, it looks like Fresh Lobster is agreeing that's probably not worth that risk considering how much mana BlackBoss is currently sitting on.
I actually kind of liked the idea of challenging the Swiftwing Lancer and then attacking with your Yeti. You do open yourself up to a riposte on the Badger Bear specifically, since you can't Brittle Steel that one, so I guess that's why Lobster held it back. And I guess just, yeah, respecting the riposte while he doesn't have the Harsh Winds mana makes a fair bit of sense.
Oh boy, so I'm really curious. This game is very much neck and neck with the way Fresh Lobster is drawing. The issue is, obviously, with the way these decks are built, I mean, Fresh Lobster's draws are much better overall than the card value that BlackBoss has on the cards in his deck. I mean, BlackBoss is a more aggressive deck, so his cards inherently are going to have less individual value, whereas, Fresh Lobster, he's got things like Reckoning that he can play. He still hasn't even drawn into a Sejuani or an Ash at this point. Not to mention, I think, isn't this Aversion Hearthguard, is this the first one we've seen all game and he still hasn't played any of them?
Yeah, this is the first one. And he's just finding his key cards a little bit too late. As you said, this is the first Hearthguard. We still haven't seen any copies of Ash. He has seen all 3 Trifarian Assessor, but they really haven't gotten him to his key cards, and we haven't seen Sejuani either. So, like, he's gotten a lot of draws off, but they have been probably some of the weakest draws in his deck that you could imagine. He still hasn't found any of these heavy hitters that he kind of needs to take over the matchup. Not that he's in a bad spot currently, but this game is going to drag on for quite a bit longer. Luckily for Lobster, there are no time limits in day 2, so these players are going to get the full however long it takes to get us to a victory here.
I was going to go a different route with that. I was going to say, luckily for Lobster, he now has his hat on, which is like, now he's going to win. Now he has to win.
Every time he adds an article of clothing, it gets more powerful. That's why we see the sunglasses come out when he's taking things seriously.
Yeah, and then the hat comes out, and no, shit's definitely about to get real now.
Yeah, if you see the scarf get on this man, oh boy. Lobster currently sitting at Super Saiyan 2. Gonna see how much higher he has to climb to pull out a victory here.
Hey, Larviturber. I hope I pronounced that right. Don't use that link. Use this link and try to copy and paste it, because apparently my copy and paste did not work. I actually have to, I forgot to change that deck code from last tournament, casting so much, so.
Yeah, and like Rhymefang without the Ash doesn't feel like it gets a lot of value. Proactively Harsh Windsing is terrifying. It's a big mana commitment for something that might not work out. And we haven't seen Black Boss's life total move in the last couple of turns, just kind of stalemating it out. And I'm kind of, I really don't have like a great read on how this game is going to go from here because there are, so many riposte in Black Boss's deck. This is sort of the turn where we would get to see a Bright Steel formation come down, but Black Boss went for the open attack, so that's not an option. I do like Lobster's not even really worried about something like that. He does have the Harsh Winds and Culling Strike mana still available if that does come out, and Riposte not enough to save it. Purify would save it.
All right.
But then you take away its ability forever.
That's so weird. I'm not sure why. I just fixed the deck link for the command, but it's not hyperlinking the entire thing. Kind of weird. Stinking computers. So we finally see the Avarosian Hearthguard coming down here, which is definitely going to help Fresh Lobster out a lot. It's going to trade pretty well into everything on Black Boss's side of the field. I mean, Black Boss is really just a bannerman away from really getting ahead of Fresh Lobster here. And I think, honestly, if he's playing that War Chefs right now, I think that's what's about to happen. Ooh, wow. Still not able to find that bannerman, and that feels really bad at this point. He definitely needs something to bolster these units up because drawing a second Hearthguard on the side of Fresh Lobster is going to be... Man, his units are going to be strong. He might not have drawn Ash and Sejuani this whole game, but when he finally does draw them, they're going to be some big boys and gals. Actually, they're both gals, so gals.
Yeah, Lobster has pretty much nothing left in the deck except for gas, so he's going to be kind of stepping on this one and looking to end it pretty soon. All the bad draws have already come out, so that's off the table. A Reckoning here would actually be devastating for Black Boss, so just another power card that Lobster hasn't quite found yet. And while Avarosian Hearthguard is good, it's not as good as Sejuani or Ash or anything like that.
Yeah, and I think, we were talking earlier about how Fresh Lobster hasn't been able to find them, and I think, that was kind of the window for Black Boss to really take the victory. But unfortunately, Black Boss is drawing just as miserably as Fresh Lobster is. So if he had drawn a Bannerman or drawn a Cithria the Bold or really anything besides everything that costs 3 or less in his deck, he probably would have been able to kind of start to push the victory in his direction. But these Hearthguards, the field's not going to get better for the field is not going to look better for Black Boss on the side of Fresh Lobster.
Yeah, and Lobster, now that he does have the Hearthguards, has some pretty good attacks to line up. I feel like Black Boss might have been trying to stall out for something like playing Shen at the end of a turn and then getting the automatic evolution off on it with a Bright Steel Protector on the following turn. Just because that does actually take Shen out of the Culling Strike range, the buff on the attack does mean that it carries over into the evolution, making Shen a 4/7 or a 4/6 once he's upgraded. But yeah, just not being able to find anything like that. And we do see the 2 Culling Strike in Lobster's hands regardless, who is now going to get to line up some pretty favorable attacks, taking out... it looks like he is going to go for Harsh Winds if he's lining up this Rhymefang Wolf onto this Loyal Badger Bear. Or he could just be pushing through for lethal, might even just let that die, not use the proactivity, and just kind of like we saw Boss do earlier, just take a favorable board trade without firing off any spells.
Nah, you nailed it. I mean, that pretty much screams using the Harsh Winds there. I don't see any other reason why he would pull it with the Rhymefang Wolf, which is... I think at this point, especially since Black Boss has 10 mana right now, I think at this point he's like, all right, Black Boss clearly does not have the greatest hand. I think I'm okay proactively playing the Harsh Winds. Even if he does have something like a repost, it's not going to end that poorly for me. He's already getting great trades with the 2 Hearthguards over here. So I think he's 100% okay with this.
I'm actually really surprised to see the Harsh Winds come out at that point, because when your opponent lines up blocks, you have another opportunity to play something like the Harsh Winds. And if your opponent doesn't line up any blocks, then you just have lethal. So you know that you're going to have another opportunity to play this. I feel like you might as well have waited to see if your opponent was going to play a riposte.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, Boss almost certainly wouldn't have, since he does know that Harsh Winds is very likely to come out onto this Badger Bear with the Rhymefang Wolf. But if these blocks were lined up and Lobster hadn't Harsh Winds yet, I feel like Black Boss would be at an extreme disadvantage if Lobster did just decide to pass without playing the Harsh Winds.
Yeah, no, I actually agree. So 100%. We were actually talking about this yesterday when I was casting day 1 with Cass, and it's very important in this game how priority works. and who gets the next action and who has more or less mana at that point. And that's exactly what Boulevard's referring to. So for anybody who's maybe a little bit less experienced with this game, or you're just getting into it and learning how to play, it's a very key function of the game as to who has the next move. And that's what Boulevard's saying right here is, he could have pulled those in with the Glory Seeker and the Rhymefang Wolf and then passed back over before playing the Harsh Winds, because he already had lethal on the board otherwise. So his opponent has to line up blocks, and then the priority again passes back to Fresh Lobster. So he would have been able to draw out something like a repost first and then play the Harsh Wind and get even more value out of it. So yeah, I 100% agree there. I am actually surprised he did that proactively like that.
Yeah, and now Boss, this is the one opportunity that Boss has to play Shen into a Brightsteel formation on the following turn to get that automatic upgrade, and Lobster will never have an opportunity to throw down the Culling Strike onto that Shen in response. There is the Shen. Brightsteel formation. This could be big for Black Boss. There is only one in the deck, and Harsh Wind's Culling Strike will still kill it, but at least we'll get to see a Shen upgrade.
And okay, well, that's just as good. That's just as good.
Yeah.
I would like to see if he has another Brightsteel in hand, but I still think he's a little too far behind now. Like if that Shen had if that Bannerman, I should say, came maybe a couple turns earlier, we'd be seeing a much different game state right now. But I think he's shit out of luck right now, especially with both of these Culling Strikes. There's just not a lot he's going to be able to do moving forward.
Yeah, and with this Ash finally picked up from Flesh Lobster, if he can hold on to the Harsh Winds for an offensive play, I think he's almost certainly got lethal with the Ash upgrade. I haven't kept track of how many Frostbites have come out this game, but I can do the simple math of 1 Harsh Winds last turn plus 1 Harsh Winds and an Ash attack does mean that she will level up.
Wow. I kind of liked the call that you made with the Shen followed by, oh Jesus, I always forget that card's name, to be honest with you.
Brightsteel Formation.
Brightsteel Formation, yeah. God, I would have loved to see that, because that's one of those plays that you don't really think is ever going to happen with the auto level for the Shen, but playing it in this type of deck, it's probably a very common, ideal situation for this deck to actually pull off with Shen if they do make it towards the late game, and it just feels bad, man. Black Boss is just not drawing what he needs to do. Stuff exactly like that. He didn't draw the Bannerman quick enough, and he didn't have the Brightsteel formation like you were hoping he had to.
Yeah, the only reason I ever remember that play is because back in the Korean Invitational, which is how a lot of people got into Legends of Runeterra, Shen Fiora was the standard Bannerman deck at the time, and they just ran like Shen, Neverglade Caretaker, or Brightsteel Caretaker, and the
I think it's Neverglade. Neverglade Caretaker. Is that the one drop you're talking about?
Yeah, that one.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. But I saw so many people just Shen into Brightsteel formation, and the auto level up, and then everything gains a bunch of attack thanks to the Shen, and then you attack, and just everything goes crazy. So that's why I saw that play so much. But yeah, we do see we did see the Harsh Winds. Okay, so the attack declaration hasn't come out yet. That is going to slam down onto that Fleet Feather Tracker, and that is going to be game number 1 going the way of Fresh Lobster. And now here's where the heartbreak comes in. Let's say that this Hecarim Vladimir deck isn't banned. There's a chance that Black Boss gets 2-0'd with the Demacia deck, and we just never see it come out anyway.
Yeah, possibly. So please, I really hope that doesn't happen. Why are you so negative about this? Jesus.
I'm trying to temper your expectations. I don't want to see you get your heart broken. I want to let you down easy and give you the possibility.
This is literally like, yesterday. It started yesterday when we were gonna stream a Vladimir deck, and then our hopes and dreams got shot down then because the stream got all messed up. And yes, all right. Yes. All right. Can we just get a quick round of applause? Can
I get whatever the opposite of F is in the chat?
Yeah.
Can I get some backwards Fs in chat? Some upside down Fs.
That's a positivity right there, okay? Oh, God. I spelled it wrong. It's supposed to be with 3 Ys. I can't do math, and we can't spell in this cast. It's okay. We'll make it.
We can't spell. We can't do math. We can't do anything for you guys. I hope you all are entertained, because that's all we have.
All right, guys, we are at that moment. It has arrived. We have the Noxus and I almost said Freljord. I don't know why. Shadow Isles deck with good old Hecarim and Vladimir, both of which got some sweet buffs on the last patch 1.2. Oh my God, Nova LOL69 was able to do a backwards F in chat. kind of excited about it. Where did you find that character? Where is that? It's in the you had to delve into the character map, didn't you? That's where that was.
No, he's got one of those Australian keyboards. You know, everything's backwards there. So.
Oh God. All right. So Fresh Lobster with the deep sea monsters, but who we are way more excited about right now is BlackBoss. So I'm fully rooting for BlackBoss. I'm just gonna make my side taking known as it is right now. I am 100% on the side of BlackBoss as much as I love Fresh Lobster. BlackBoss, let's go. Let's see it.
And looking at Lobster's deck, so the one thing that I do want to note is that BlackBoss is running, you know, the Imperial Demolitionist Crimson Disciple, which is that's the wrong one to play first, but we have seen this combo be devastating and burned before, and Lobster not running any copies of Withering Wail or Grasp of the Undying does mean his healing is a little limited. There are still things like Noxian Fervors to dodge out the lifesteal, the Dreadbloom Wanderer. And I do think that this Curator means that, this Imperial Demolitionist rather does mean that BlackBoss is going for a very aggressive opener, probably missing the Crimson Disciple and the Cursed Keeper, as those are his other 2-drop options. And yeah, we're going to see the Trifarian, or the Reckless Trifarian coming down, which does line up very poorly into this Jaw Hunters.
Wow. So we were having some discussions. I was having some discussions with Cero actually about Reckless Trifarian and comparison to Badger Bear, the old Badger Bear. It's like, well, Badger Bear is just like Reckless Trifarian is just unplayable thanks to Badger Bear. But this is one of the small reasons why, it feels really bad to lose it to a Jaw Hunter, especially because the Jaw Hunter gets a free sea monster. But I do like the way BlackBoss has already played this deck. It shows me that he is very knowledgeable with how this deck is supposed to play, because it's not easy playing an Imperial, like willing yourself to play an Imperial Demolitionist on turn 2, not getting the play effect off.
Yeah, and I'm curious to see how this continues to play out for him. We do see Crimson Awakener. Crimson Awakener is the only 4-drop, and I think next turn is really where BlackBoss's deck turns on. We can see Vladimir into Hecarim into the triple Rekindler, and we do see 1 Ruination in Lobster's deck, and he's going to have to hold on to that very tightly, as there are 2 Harrowing in BlackBoss's deck. And I really don't think Lobster has great answers to the Harrowing, especially if they do come out onto upgraded Hecarims, since he does now have that +3 attack buff for ephemeral units since the old rework onto him. So I am actually pretty excited to see Harrowing Hecarim potentially just overwhelm this Sea Monster deck.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see what happens right now. Wait a second. Did you say he gets the +3 attack? I thought they just increased his base attack stats, not his ephemeral buffs.
They buffed the ephemeral buff because they nerfed the Spectral Riders, so they still wanted them to be 5/2s when Hecarim was upgraded.
Oh, that's right. Okay, gotcha. So, and I do want to point out too, just because we have Fresh Lobster's deck list up thanks to good old Mobile Extractor here, but there is 2 copies of Harrowing. There is also 3 copies of Rekindler. We have 1 Mark of the Isles in there for that surprise win towards the end of the game. 3 Transfusion and 3 Noxian Fervor. So very aggressive here.
That 1 Mark of the Isle is what I was talking about a little bit earlier. When you're going into an open decklist tournament, then having these one-of blowout cards that you force your opponent to play around for the entire game can be extremely impactful. Lobster can never try to let himself fall to 2 life on attacks because he might get blown out by this Mark of the Isle. And whether or not BlackBoss actually drew it is irrelevant. Lobster has to respect it.
Yeah, can we rip +3/+3 Mark of the Isles? Oh my God, was that broken? Oh boy. I remember that meta like it was yesterday. Not fun.
A distant time and a distant past. And BlackBoss actually going to be able to get a very impactful attack with this Vladimir, going to kill the Cursed Keeper, push through some damage, and get that a little bit extra damage pushed through with the Disciple. I wish they would have put regen on Vlad's front side. I think that was sort of the buff that I had wanted to see.
I do agree. Yeah, I agree 100% with that. And especially, I mean, right now he's at 20, so it's not the most impactful thing right now. But it is something to note. He is already very behind on card advantage in comparison to Fresh Lobster. So I feel like Fresh Lobster is going to have a lot of tools to stay alive early here. The early Vlad, I think, for BlackBoss is going to help immensely, because I think Fresh Lobster is going to have some trouble getting rid of it until he goes deep, because he needs to basically use a Devourer on it once the Devourer is 7/7, and even then it's going to be rough with transfusion. So I do think the Vladimir's huge right now. I think it's definitely going to push through a lot of damage, but I think he needs to win the game here in the next couple of turns, or maybe next 4 turns or so.
Yeah, there is the possibility for he needs to get like a Hecarim train going on the following turns, and I actually do think we're going to see Vile Feast in conjunction with the Jaw Hunters kill this Vladimir here. But I don't think Vladimir is really like the main champion of this deck. Hecarim does cost one more, even though he has the same stat line. So that's what's likely to get revived with Rekindler. Unless, so upgraded Vlad is more likely to happen than upgraded Hecarim, and upgraded Vlad will get revived with Rekindler over non-upgraded Hecarim.
Yes. Yep.
There's actually a lot of manipulation that Black Boss can do within his Rekindler plays, and maybe like forcing an upgraded Vlad and getting that down. The one concern is that Devourer of the Depths does obliterate either of these champions and takes them out of the death pool for things like Harrowing and Rekindler. But as long as you can get one copy to die, it doesn't feel so bad. And I do think that Vladimir is at least going to get added to the death pool here for the Rekindler.
Yeah, and I gotta say, one thing about this deck, as much as I love that he's playing a Vladimir, ooh, he doesn't go with the Vile Feast yet. Okay.
Yeah, this is why the regen keyword that Vlad gets on upgrade, I would love to see that on the front side, because we get to see Lobster just take this value miscall and then Vile Feast it on the next turn.
Now, is there ever, let's see, 2 things took damage, so Vlad's at 2 of 6, right?
Yeah, that was actually kind of a low roll on Lobster side. He definitely wanted to see the Jaw Hunters, I feel.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think, is there ever a way that Black Boss can level the Vlad in response to the Vile Feast? I don't think there is right now.
He does have Transfusion as an option now, though, to save it.
Yeah, I that still seems curious to me that he would have went with... I'm surprised Fresh Lobster didn't play the Vile Feast, because now Black Boss was on 1 mana. There was no way for him to save Vladimir. Now there's plenty of outs that he has to save this Vladimir, so I don't think Fresh Lobster is actually scared much at all about the Vladimir.
Yeah, which is a little surprising. I would think he really did want to get that Jaw Hunters. Would have traded greatly onto this Escaped Abomination. Instead, just getting this Lifesteal unit does accelerate to the deep plan a little bit, but I don't think that's really... Lobster still seems so far away with it with this slow hand. I'm not sure it's really going to make an impact. And Maokai going to come down. I would assume that this Vile Feast is going to come down alongside it, as it's the only other thing that he could play this turn.
Well, Mingles, that's actually a good point, because one thing I did want to mention in this matchup, I started saying it before that had happened. So, as much as I love this deck, I do think that it is extremely weak to Jaw Hunters alone. Like, you have all these 4 health, like you got the Abomination on board, Jaw Hunters trades with it. You have Reckless Trifarian, Jaw Hunters trades with it. And there's just a lot of ways, and even the Vlad, Jaw Hunters does 4 damage, and then he's within Vile Feast range. So I do think Jaw Hunters trades much more favorably with the board, with Black Boss's deck, than most other cards. But yeah, you could argue getting deep fast is definitely never a bad thing for a sea monster deck, right? So
my problem is I don't think it's fast. It's just a little bit faster than previous, and this Hecarim is actually going to be pretty backbreaking for Lobster.
Yep.
This is what Black Boss wanted. This is the damage he wanted to push through. And something that I did want to touch on is, don't get me wrong, I love Vladimir. I absolutely love the card. I think it's fantastic. But I feel like the Crimson package that is supposed to support him is actually pretty anti-synergistic with him, because so many of the units are so weak. That's why we see things like Jaw Hunters be so good against this deck. And I almost feel like we would need to see a rework of the Crimson package in a major way, like we did with Mage Seekers, in order to kind of push Vladimir into an actual meta spot, instead of just like this fringe playability that we sometimes see him come out as.
Yeah, and I think you nailed it earlier with Hecarim being kind of the priority in this deck, right? Because you can see there, like, Black Boss knew what he was doing by playing the Hecarim only being on 1 mana. Like, he obviously knows that Vile Feast is in Fresh Lobster's deck, so he is prioritizing keeping the Hecarim or getting the Hecarim on field as quickly as possible. And I mean, yeah, I really think that right now, if he just plays super aggressively, he has a real shot of being able to win this game pretty quickly in the next couple of turns. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Do we know how deep Fresh Lobster is right now?
Last I saw, he was at 23. I don't think Maokai has done anything since then, so I think he's still a little bit above 20 cards. 8 away from deep, so he's at 23.
So, okay, so it's looking like probably he won't be deep until his next attack turn. He could, oh, actually, wait, 4, there's going to be 4 from Salvage.
The Dreadbloom Wanderer and Salvage.
Yes, yeah, and with the Maokai on field. So he actually could get deep next turn.
Yeah, it's pretty likely to be the case. But killing this Hecarim doesn't even feel super... If we see like a Rekindler come out here to revive the Vladimir, just having those 2 units next to each other, and if Black Boss kind of takes a turn off on Lobster's attack turn, even if his board gets wiped out, and then he can follow up with something like a Harrowing on the following turn, the shields are kind of down for Lobster. It's hard to set up, all this stuff without Nautilus on board, and the Ruination hasn't been drawn yet. The one thing that I I'm going to need to get into the habit too of, as a caster, is actually keeping track of what has been tossed so far, because I have no idea if this Ruination is even still in the deck for Lobster. It could be gone by now, and I just don't know.
Listen, that's hard, man. That's just like it's like tracking what that little scroll on the left is tracking all game.
Yeah.
I feel like we need a pad and paper at that point, but I definitely feel you, because we should be tracking that, and obviously the players are. You see them hit that scroll throughout the game. They want to know what's in the deck, what's not in the deck. So
Yeah, Shihu in Europe earlier today, every time something got tossed, he would go into the sidebar, scroll up, find it, and write it down. And I was like, thank you. I get to see it as well. This is very helpful for me, the caster, but it's so hard for me to catch it in the moment. I can't read my own handwriting. I'm not just gonna jot it down. I'll just look at it and be like, yeah, it looks like he tossed a brain control. I don't know what that's supposed to mean, but that's not in the deck anymore.
So Ice Dragon Kid saying definitely milled. So
okay.
We'll see if that's the case. Yeah, Ice Dragon, thank you very much for letting us know that. See, at least somebody's paying attention. You'd think we would be, but... And, I got to say, every time you say Shihu, even though I know you're referring to somebody, I keep thinking you're going to say She Who Wanders.
Yes.
I haven't seen that card in forever. I just rip She Who Wanders.
When Jen told me that's how it was pronounced, I'm like, oh, that's easy to remember because I love She Who Wanders.
Yeah.
A little disappointed he didn't take the opportunity in whatever game he came from into LOR to actually kind of add that Wanders onto the end of his tag. But...
Yeah. So you were actually earlier with the mirror match talking about these Abyssal Eye elusives, and it looks like they're going to do work in this matchup too, because there's no easy way really for the Black Boss to be able to get rid of these elusive units outside of anything. I don't think there's anything. I don't think there's literally anything in his deck that's going to be able to get rid of these.
Yeah, and something that I also touched on earlier in the mirror is the lack of vengeance, and that is the one thing that we don't see coming out of Black Boss. We see his spell lineup is like Noxian Fervor, and then absolutely nothing until the Harrowing. Nothing between 4 and 9 mana in the spell slot. Which is actually a little surprising to me, because Ruination feels like a pretty good card against the sea monsters, and something that you're generally not too mad about playing in Harrowing decks, since you have that one card auto refill the board. It's a great follow-up to Ruination, and I'm just a little surprised not to see any removal coming out of this deck, even though we see things like the 3 Noxian Fervor.
Ice Dragon Kid actually said, yeah, milled by the first angler. So see, this is what we need chat for. Thank you very much. Chat's gonna be our notepad and pen. All right, this is what chat. Thank you, chat. Thank you very much. And more specifically, Ice Dragon Kid.
Yeah, the rest of you fake viewers, Ice Dragon Kid's the only real one.
Yeah, come on, man. We need this stuff tracked. We need the help here.
Sorry, Ice Dragon Kid and whoever put the backwards F in chat.
Oh, we had a few people. Apparently, a few people know how to use the character map in Windows, because Lawrence NYG and Mingles the Cat were also able to put a backwards F in there. So.
Yeah, I think even so, Black Boss didn't really get to trade off that much of his board, and I don't think the Harrowing next turn is actually that impactful unless he could get a high number of ephemeral units attacking, because the Vladimir would trigger onto all of them as long as you position it correctly. That ability will go off after the Spectral Riders come out. You could have pushed through 6 damage with that, and then the Hecarim upgrade, giving everything the +3 attack, could have been a huge play, but instead getting down this Crimson Awakener, and this is a card that I'm not super sold on in the Crimson package. I've seen it in every Vladimir deck this weekend. I understand that a 4-mana 5/5 is pretty impactful. It comes down just a little bit earlier than any other 5/5 in the game, but I don't know. I'm just not... I feel like because these Crimson units only have 3 health, you get to Awakener them and then attack with a Vladimir, and then they just die to pretty much everything else in the format.
Yeah, I actually also mentioned this yesterday. I'm not sold on Crimson Awakener. He seems so good, like you said, because he is a 5/5. I think the idea with him is, if you really are going all out on Crimson, he's great. You on a board full of Crimson units, you're probably going to get a ton of advantage. And wow, this... Okay, so we just saw what the goal is, and it's literally what's happening right here, which is Harrowing on a 4-unit board will always get at least Hecarim and Vlad back, and then he also has these Crimson units already on the board. So he's going to be doing a ton of damage with the Vlad. He's going to be doing, that's 5 drain, so he's going to get back up in health a little bit. So, and that's kind of one way of dealing with the Abyssal Eyes. All right, it doesn't matter if I can't deal with the Abyssal Eyes if I just keep healing every turn, right?
Yeah, and if he can find a mark... So Hecarim is currently at 2 out of 7. If there is a Mark of the Isle coming out onto something, and then you attack with that one thing, the Vladimir, the Hecarim, and one other thing, then Hecarim will actually upgrade and give the +3 to everything. but you would need that one Mark of the Isle, and you'd have to play it pre-combat so that before like the blockers are declared, so that Hecarim actually gets value onto it. But I don't think Black Boss is actually going to go for that one. I think he is just going to let this this 5/5 overwhelm kind of do its work. The Spectral Rider's pretty unlikely to come out this turn. Might hold back the 5/5 and the 4/2 just since they might get blocked out anyway.
Yeah, I'm thinking both Crimsons go, the Heck goes, the Vlad goes, and then get the 2 Spectral Riders. That kind of gives you the most value possible. You're gonna get 2 more damage, a unit in your hand. Talon Myriad said this is actually super scary, and not just because of the spooky old Hecarim and Vladimir on the field. This is a very scary board, and I will say Flesh Lobster is playing 2 copies of Vengeance, so it's a little bit risky. Because he could have played, there goes 1 Vengeance right there. He could have played into a Vengeance there. But leveling up the Maokai here is definitely big as well. It's kind of putting a clock on the Black Boss to finish off this game, if not next turn. I mean, let's hope he had another Harrowing in hand, right?
Yeah, and I'm actually pretty sure that this is another thing. Like we see the Maokai level up come out here, and it does put Black Boss on a clock. But with these 2 Abyssal Eyes on board, I feel like that's a faster clock. He's going to get to gain a bit of life this turn, but there's a pretty good chance the Lobster could just finish it out on the next turn anyway, since he does have a much bigger board and a lot of room to set up.
Yeah, Mingle said, nice to see this kind of deck go far. Harrowing is an underrated bomb in a tournament meta where Ionia's a banned, and yet. You nailed it. I actually was thinking about mentioning that earlier because of Sea Monsters, and I think that may be one of the reasons why this deck is seeing success right now in an environment where Sea Monsters are prevalent and Ionia usually gets banned. Sea Monsters itself, like, I imagine this deck usually beats pretty regularly because there's no deny. Like, you can freely play Harrowing and just always get a good Harrowing off. And that was one of the reasons why back when Harrowing was first played, it was very hard to play because everybody was all pro Ionia. Oh my god, denies busted. When it was at 3 mana, it was really good too. So Harrowing doing work right here on this turn.
Yeah, the other problem was that the Harrowing was most usually played in Ionia decks. Karma Harrowing was sort of the mainstay one, so that one was just getting banned out a lot. But we did see the Mark of the Isle come out pre-combat that I had mentioned earlier. Gonna let that Hecarim level up and push through the +3 attack on everything. But Lobster gonna have to sacrifice most of his board, but not all of it. The big heavy hitter here actually is I'm trying to think. It's so hard. I can't do normal math, and now you want me to add in a Vladimir ability and a Crimson Disciple hit and this Hecarim Overwhelm.
Man, you'd think I'd be on top of Nightbot, but I'm slacking on the Nightbot end right now.
And yeah, I do think this might just be lethal for Lobster on... No, there's no way this is lethal for Lobster on the next turn. He doesn't have enough setup without the Nautilus already down. There is going to be a lot traded off from Black Boss, but also from Lobster. Only these Abyssal Eyes going to survive the turn, which does mean that he doesn't quite have lethal. He is just 1 shy thanks to that Vladimir ability. And he's not going to be able to build. He's not going to be able to build up enough units to get around the 2 blockers out of Black Boss.
Yeah, and this is what I was talking about earlier. I mean, he's right back up to 13. You have these 2 Abyssal Eyes, which, they're threatening 12 damage, but it's only 12 damage, and that Drain is just doing work right now.
There is a potential lethal out of Black Boss on the following turn. If a Crimson Disciple was picked off this Curator, and Black Boss has 2 copies of Transfusion in hand, there's nothing Lobster can do about that.
Can he do anything? Wait, how many copies of Imperial? He's playing 3 Imperial Demolitionist. Were those? We don't know if they're tossed or not, right?
We saw 1 get played earlier, and we don't know if the other ones are tossed. You can actually hover the sidebar and see what was tossed by the Maokai, which is really nice because if you can quickly sort it out, you can figure out what is actually left in your deck. But there are still some burn opportunities for Black Boss, but I think Crimson Disciple has to be a part of it.
Yeah, it's probably pretty likely. I mean, is there any way he could counter it with a proactive Vengeance too? Like if he were to draw another Vengeance, he could Vengeance the Disciple before he plays the Demolitionist. So the definite win, I think you're right, is 2 Transfusion and a Disciple.
But that's a pretty big ask. We don't know what's in Boss's hand, but if he can survive this turn and get off, if he has like a second Harrowing in hand, which his first Harrowing was kind of weak, but I don't really mind weak Harrowings if you're going to fire it off with a stronger one later on. So that is also a possibility. But now it actually, thanks to the Maokai upgrade creating the Sapling, if Black Boss doesn't play another unit here, then Lobster does just have lethal.
Yeah, I think this might force out, if he does have a harrowing, it might force it out. If we see a disciple come down, I'll be very excited because that might be good. He might be able to just play. I mean, he can block the Nautilus no matter what. So he's not worried about the fearsome tag. So he might just have like another random unit. Feel bad if he has a Cursed Keeper in his hand, obviously. So hopefully that's not what's clunking up his hand right now. Maybe we do see a Crimson Disciple just for the sake of blocking, but he just doesn't have anything to really proc its effects right now.
I just realized that I'm out here talking about complicated lethals that involve Disciple and double transfusion, and there's just 3 Noxian Fervor in BlackBoss's deck.
Yes, there are. Yes. I totally forgot about those. Wow, we see the Hecarim come down too, and then a Beast from Below. The Beast from Below, we gotta figure. There's actually... There are much more followers in the BlackBoss's deck, so it's highly likely that he does have another 4-cost or less follower in hand. So I think he still can live, but there is a Riptide in the hand of Fresh Lobster. So if we see a 4-cost unit come down, we might just see the Riptide come out to win the game.
Yeah, and I'm actually a little concerned about this Hecarim play because Lobster can just pull one of the 2 health units to the side with this Maokai sapling, and that will mean that Hecarim is going to have to block. Ooh.
All right, so he did get one of them. This means he does not have Disciple, though. So that's...
I think Lobster just Riptides this, though.
Yeah, I think he does, and it still puts him in a position to win the game.
To win the game, yeah.
I'm trying to think of anything else that...
Because Noxian Fervor is just 1 shy of lethal.
Yeah, not Noxian Fervor just doesn't really do anything for BlackBoss, so I think the Riptide just wins it for him here. I'm trying to think. I mean, Culling Strike would technically get rid of... Culling Strike gets him to live. There's only one of those in there, though. Noxian Fervor actually gets him to live by killing the sapling. Mark of the Isles doesn't do anything. So there actually is outs. If he has another Imperial Demolitionist, we know he's not on Crimson Disciple.
Yeah.
An Imperial Demolitionist would be able to block. So it is definitely some outs to live for BlackBoss, but it's looking grim as far as winning the game here.
Yeah, unless actually, if we do see another, so if we see another copy of Harrowing come out on the next turn after he lives, I'm pretty sure he has lethal because 3 Hecarim have died. So those will all buff each other up with the Overwhelm, becoming like 15 6s with Overwhelm. So unless Lobster can salvage into potentially multiple copies of Nautilus's Riptide, he might just die.
Yeah, Mingles, I kind of agree. He said if only the BlackBoss had a better early game. I mean, playing that first turn Imperial Demolitionist definitely felt super bad.
Yeah, and I mean, there are still ways BlackBoss can get out of it. Could have the Calling Strike onto the Maokai, but unless he's got that second copy of Harrowing, I don't think he's pulling this one out regardless.
Oh, we see the Shen emote.
Yeah.
Feels bad, man. Feels bad. Yeah, that's the game. Well, it was a valiant effort. It was definitely a valiant effort. I very much enjoyed seeing Hecarim and Vladimir both give it a go. And honestly, he was a turn away from winning. And that's including having to play an Imperial Demolitionist on turn 1 with 0 effect. Or turn 2, I should say. Oh, God. Well, he does make top cut. So I really am looking forward to hopefully he streams so we can cast his POV. That would be a pretty neat dandy. All right, that's it. That's the round 8 gameplay. So we're gonna be coming soon with round 9 as well as some top 16 footage. Can't wait to get that up for you guys, and hopefully we'll be casting another tournament again this weekend. So as always, everybody stay healthy, stay positive. I hope shit just works for you, and peace out.